Welcome to our weekly reading where we explore all things astrological. From our two different points of view in two different locations in the world, we bring to you a unique astrological perspective on what is happening right now across the globe. So here we go. Hello everybody, this is Diana in LA and Cary in the UK, and we're here to talk about this week's stars. We've had such a year, and such a beginning of this coming year, 2021, has started off with such a bang and with so many changes in the air and in our lives that it's hard to keep up with. And all I know is everyone that I've been speaking with has been talking to me about different areas in their lives where it's kind of exploding, very challenging. Places where the ground is moving underneath of them in a way that they didn't expect, whether it be in relationship, whether it be in health, whether it be about finances. All the main subjects of our lives, where we live, how we work, what we think, how we can get along even with each other, are being challenged to such a heightened amount that it feels very tenuous out there. And as we enter this week, it's like that some more, and is continuing to be, as we've talked about, for some while. And this week, again, is another intense week. Last week we had the full moon. It was super intense, and many things occurred around the world and in our own lives that were striking in different ways. And so here we are in another round of this without the full moon, so that's quieter a little bit, but the intensity is still there. So how do we work with these energies at this time? How do we use them to gain and to make our lives better rather than be run over by the intensity? How can we work with it? That's what I always wonder when I look at aspects. So one more thing to think about is that Mercury went retrograde today, Saturday, this morning at 7:30 in Aquarius. So it's part of that stellium that's making the T-square. So here we are with Mercury retrograde in Aquarius and all of this dissent and disagreement in the air. And now what do? Cary, how are you seeing things from your side of the world?
I think this is going to be a very challenging week. I think that the transit of Mars and Uranus squaring the four of the planets in Aquarius at the moment is having a huge effect. I think we need to be mindful that the square of Saturn and Uranus is going to continue for the next few months. But for this week, it's about the Sun squaring Mars. So the Sun is a fast-moving planet, Mars is a fast-moving planet, and they're squaring each other. So that in itself is very challenging because there's a kind of tension in the air. And it doesn't help when you've got Uranus near, because you've still got that conjunction by it's a 7-degree orb, so a 7-degree difference between the two planets. But by both planets squaring some of the planets in Aquarius at the same time, it's making it a very strong square. So it's going to be a challenging week. Personally, looking at these, I think it may be about medical news, because there's a lot of news about vaccines. For example, there was tension between the UK and Europe, that's Mars, Uranus. So there's still a lot of tension in the air, but things are getting resolved. Now, as Mars eventually moves out of Taurus and goes into Gemini, it's going to have a very nice effect and lighten up things a little bit, but it's not going to happen for a few more weeks.
Right, and even though in the beginning of March things are going to calm down because Mars will have changed signs and moved into an air sign as well, like you said, we're still dealing with Uranus square Saturn hard, right, all the way through May. So there's a lot going on where these structures, we keep talking about the structures changing and being undone and rebuilt and turned inside out and re-looked at, and that is happening. And meanwhile, we've got vaccines not taking the vaccine, not taking the vaccine, not believing in the vaccines, believing in the vaccine, being afraid, mask wearing, not wearing masks. In America, it's pandemonium. There's such a division. There's not consensus. That's the word. There's not consensus. And so there's this general feeling of movement and unknownness, and that's Uranus, right? We don't know what's going to happen.
You know, just looking up the lineup at the moment, this is you said that lots of people are being affected by what's going on at this time. And when you look at this lineup, you've got the square in Taurus to the squares in Aquarius. So anybody in the first half of Leo, the first half of Scorpio, the first half of the month of Taurus, the first half of the month of Aquarius, you are going to be feeling this, you know. And the air signs out there, also in the first half of their birth month, will be feeling this in a lighter way than the other signs I just mentioned, because it will be creating a trine with these planets in Aquarius, but you're still affected by the square of Saturn to Uranus. So going forward, we've still got a bit of a challenging time, and we need to be a little bit like the water flowing down the mountain and continuing going around the obstacles and continuing on its way.
I love that advice, Cary. It's the Tao, right? To go with the flow, because the resistance will only make it worse. There is this unrest. There's unrest and division. Aquarius is about science. We were talking about that, and medical discoveries, new patents, new inventions, but it's also about humanitarian ideals. So somehow, and all that's being challenged, right, by the square. All of that's being challenged and argued. Like, what is true? And all I know, my advice would be, on top of your advice, is you must use the instrument of your knowing as a tool of discernment to navigate what is right for you. I mean, that's all I know. And what will be, at least from my perspective, for the greater good of all. That is done by your own attunement of feeling where things are and how to respond to them, how to work with the energies, and have an ability within yourself to be able to sense between all the data that is coming out to feel what is true. We have so much work to do. So look at your own life. Where in your own life is the work to be done, I wonder? Because it's equivalent, right? It's equivalent. I'm touched by it. Cary's touched by it. We're all touched by it. We're being touched by it in our own sectors of our chart where these planets are landing, these aspects are occurring. We are having personal experiences of this while the whole world is having a personal experience of it too. So it's really important to stay centered and to use that inner guiding light to navigate your life right now and stay on track. I do that by meditating. That's the way that I work with it. I teach meditation. I feel like it's the strongest, most clearest path from soul to self. And you can use that tool, right, to help you understand what's happening. Because, see, to understand what's happening, Mercury's retrograde, what's happening anyway? There's so many things we can't see, that are hidden, that are behind the scenes, that we don't even know. And the repercussions of what's been happening, we can't see yet. We're beginning, we have glimmers, we think, that's something there, that's something there. We can sort of note that that could turn into something good or bad, but we're in the middle of it. So we can't solve it yet, in a sense. So we have to take one step at a time, and that requires patience.
And when you get a lineup like you have at the moment, especially with the lineup in Aquarius, if you can read your astrological chart, you want to have a look and see how that's impacting on some of the planets that you've got in your chart near those degrees of those planets in Aquarius. So you're looking for planets in Leo around about those degrees. planets in Scorpio and Taurus round about those degrees, air planets in particular at those particular degrees. So you're looking from 2 degrees to 14 degrees. Look at that, because this kind of lineup is having a huge effect on everybody's chart.
Right. Nobody's getting out of this easy.
No. So we've got to be patient. We've just got to roll with it for a while and just pay attention to what's going on.
Right. And Mars conjunct Uranus is not patient at all.
It's unpredictable. It's violent. It could be explosive. However, the conjunction is weakening, but by it weakening, Mars is still squaring some of those planets in Aquarius, and Uranus is also squaring some of those planets in Aquarius. So even though it's a light conjunction between the two, by both of them squaring the planets which are setting all those planets off in Aquarius, it's kind of the same as having a conjunction, the stronger conjunction. So at the moment, things are tense. And if you look politically in the United States, that feeling that took place a couple of weeks ago hasn't evaporated, it's still there. So we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know the kind of things that are happening under the surface to challenge, and that is the square of Saturn to Uranus. So there's going to be lots of things like that happening over the next few weeks, and it could be some very good things, like there could be some incredible breakthroughs on the medical ground, and I think there will. Right
now we have, for instance, an exact square between Sun and Mars by itself. That is so much to deal with. But then if you think of Sun also squaring Uranus, then it's compounded, you see. And we've got 2 massive stelliums, Mars and Uranus, in 6 degrees and 14 degrees of Taurus today. And then we've got Jupiter and Saturn and now Venus in Aquarius square. So that's why this time is so intense. It's just relentless, because as one thing releases, another planet is touched exactly. So as the planets come closer and closer to that exact conjunction, then of course it gets more fireworks. So that's what the tone is right now.
What I would look at next week is Wednesday, Thursday, where the Sun is squaring Mars and the Moon is opposed Mars. So I would expect some kind of emotional outburst to come out of somewhere, and that I would expect some kind of headlining news with a bit of disruption attached to it.
Right, Cary, and it's the Moon, so it's personal again. So also, besides world events being half-cocked, right, triggered is a word we could use, we can be triggered too. So mind your words. Mind your conversation. Be thoughtful in all your interactions, in traffic, at the grocery store, or with your family. Be very aware of how you speak, that you create peace in the world and harmony in your world as best as you can, given the circumstances, because this is a very personal transit.
It is, and interestingly, on Friday, Venus conjunct Saturn exact, squaring Uranus by 1 degree. So also expect something very significant to come out on that day. And I think we could look to next Friday with perhaps a breakthrough or news on the medical ground.
And in other subjects too, like humanitarian connection, Aquarius. These are interesting times we're living in, everybody. Hang in there with this. It's going to be all right. We'll get through this, but we are going through growing pains right now. We are learning a little bit the hard way, and it doesn't have to be so hard. We can get it sooner than later, and we can get it easier than harder. This is all by our creation now. How do we respond? How do we react to all of this stuff that's happening? How do we respond rather than react? So we'll leave it at that and see you next week with another Astrocast. Until then, we hope you will share these with friends, and we hope you have a wonderful week. See you next time.
Bye, everybody. Be safe.